in 2008, I found myself in a hospital in Spain, unable to convey my pain and very close to death. I had developed a blood clot and I needed treatment immediately. Despite the recommendations for the doctors who suggested that I have my parents fly out to Spain, I was in a state of disbelief. So I checked myself out of the hospital. Looking back, not such a great idea. Later that night, as I was laying in bed, I found myself not being able to breathe. I kept gasping for air for what seemed like an eternity. And then I realized I did not know what was going to happen to me. I finally decided to just give in and close my eyes and my mouth, unsure if I would be able to open them up again. When I finally decided to let go, there were a rush of images that went through my head, and I was hit by a sudden hole of sadness. It was all those small moments that I didn't take seriously that I wanted one more time. To be with my mom, to play that video game with my brother, to laugh with my friends. I regretted wasting time on the little things that worried me or angered me, and not enough time on the things that brought beauty into my life. We make life so complex, but what our inner selves desires is very simple. Now, I don't think gaining awareness from a near-death experience is unique, however. I've heard others say that facing death brings light to what is truly important. What is unique is that from my experience, it led me to an understanding of how the simple things can create hope for everyone. And today I want to talk to you about my stories of hope. So I actually have done a lot of volunteer work in India, where there's a lot of desperate poverty. The per capita income is often below the global poverty line. Malnutrition is an epidemic amongst the poor. Literacy rates are below average. And life expectancy is shorter amongst those in poverty. In addition, the social disparity, cultural division, and economic disparity further divide the poor from removing themselves from this vicious cycle of poverty. Yet, amidst of all this, I had a memorable experience at Mother Teresa's orphanage. It's a powerful place. As soon as you walk in, you realize it's a space with a room full of children who have been through more during their few years on this earth than many of us have. And despite this, they're resilient. They just want to live and continue to discover the good in this world that they naturally assumed it still had. While I was at the orphanage, there was a boy who had been crying nonstop since shortly after we had arrived. After about 20 minutes, I asked the nun who was trying to calm him down what was wrong. She says he's crying because no one is playing with him. I soon noticed that the boy had no legs and was missing an arm. He was a body and an arm, which may have led to the others to be intimidated by him. So I walked over to him, picked him up, and I asked him, "Do you like to dance?" He responded, "Yes." So I quickly twirl him around 3 times, and almost immediately he turns into this jovial, excited, energetic boy in an instant. The rest of the day he was playing with the other children, and you would have never imagined that he was that crying boy just a few moments ago. It was like magic. That simple connection transformed the both of us. Now on the flight home, I was really impacted by my journey and began reflecting on my experiences during that trip. How was it that I felt so empowered to make change by doing the simple things in someone's life in India, but not at home? How could I bring that magic I experienced there back here? And then I realized that magic can be found everywhere. The simple things do matter to us back home, but we get caught up in our day-to-day, our silos, our individual worlds, that we forget to embrace the little things and then share that with each other. That is where the magic is lost. That journey led to looking through a lot of photos and discussions with friends about realizations from our travels. I've been very fortunate enough to have traveled to a lot of different places in this world. and have met and connected with diplomats to beautiful children in many different and often difficult circumstances. You realize that we all worry about the same things. We cry and get angry about the same actions, and at the end of the day, the same things are good to us. Whether it be a sunset, a kind gesture, or a smile, the fundamental element of good is the same to all of us, and that is what connects us as human beings. So we decided to bring together some of our photos and our stories of our simple good stories in a blog and invited the world to participate and submit their own. It started with 50 photos, and then the world responded. The blog went viral, and then we started getting submissions from all over the world. Spain, Brazil, China. A newspaper in Italy even blogged about us. We began receiving submissions of different meanings of good from all over the world. It was amazing. It was amazing to see this global response to goodness within ourselves and seeing connections being made all over the world. What this taught me was that the world was waiting for a simple way to connect to each other. But I wanted to bring this understanding to the ground, this online discussion to the ground, where, back to the States, where the same desperate poverty I saw in India was in my own backyard, to communities that needed it the most, to recreate that magic I once experienced abroad. Now, even in the United States, there are places where the per capita income is below the global poverty line. Malnutrition and food deserts are also an epidemic amongst the poor. Literacy rates are below average, and life expectancy is shorter amongst those in poverty versus the general population. Now, in addition, the social disparity, cultural division, and economic disparity further divide the poor from removing themselves from this vicious cycle of poverty, even in the land of opportunity. Does that sound familiar? So I grew up in Chicago, and it's still one of my favorite places in the world. But we suffer from our violence and poverty, and this largely impacts our youth. In 2012, according to the Chicago Police Department, there were 23,000 arrests of youth under the age of 17. In 2008 to 2012, there were approximately 2,400 homicides, half of which were individuals under the age of 25 years old. And this violence goes beyond those that are directly involved in it. It also impacts those that witness it. Child development experts have agreed that trauma from witnessing an act of violence has huge impacts on development and growth, and in turn, increases the risk of that child to later engage in crime themselves. In these highly distressed communities, it's not surprising that residents continually suffer from high stress and anxiety, whether it be from lack of safety, food, job security, or even fear of having their child walk down the street. But there are simple things that can create hope even in these environments. Compassion and generosity have positive effects on our health and well-being. Now, how many of us here today have talked to a stranger or held open a door for someone? And how many of us here today understand that feeling that comes from when someone picks something up for you or gives you a compliment? These are gestures of hope. Studies have actually shown that there's a shift in chemicals in our brain when kindness is shown to us. This not only makes us spiritually feel better, but reduces stress, breathing levels, and heart rates. Therefore, in the long run, longevity. Positive emotions not only improve how we see the world, but also how we live and survive it. In fact, in Darwin's Descent of a Man, he mentions benevolence 99 times. And survival of the fittest, only twice. I run a nonprofit that works in at-risk communities in Chicago, where there's sometimes a great deal of hopelessness. When you see this initially, thinking about creating a better place for someone sometimes seems daunting. When in actuality, even in these environments, the simple things can change someone's world. So it all started by me being moved by the simple good the world had shown me, and moving this understanding into a 3rd and 4th grade classroom in one of our at-risk communities on the Chicago South Side. We implemented a curriculum that took students through a journey of understanding different meanings of good from around the world through art. Now, outside of me being an artist myself and my passion for it, the arts has a beautiful capacity, a powerful capacity for anyone to understand and conceptualize complexity, understand the breadth of the human experience, as well as develop thoughtful forms of thinking. Ironically, highly distressed environments who benefit from this sort of development usually lack art resources the most. By teaching students in at-risk communities how to look for the little good things in their life, we changed how they saw their world, which is generally stigmatized as being negative. The impact was profound. Through small activities of searching through photos with stories of good, in the blog, writing, drawing, and then creating a painting centered around their explanation of good, we saw a change in behavior. Over a course of only a few weeks, a room full of students who were generally repeating negative things that they heard in their environment suddenly became a calm, thoughtful group of students who were developing their own questions, a series of questions centered around good, such as, who do you love? One beautiful example of a student I will never forget, amongst many, is a third grade student that painted this tree. Now, despite me trying to encourage her to add different art elements into her tree, I realized during her presentation that the story of her tree was the art in itself. She tells the room, my simple good is this tree. It's a tree of hope. I drew this because sometimes in the world, people die, and you don't know why. But you should always have hope and faith that things will get better. How powerful it was to see how surrounding students with the notion of positivity for a short period of time changed how they saw the world, and in turn, how they will now begin living their life. It's the practice of doing the little good things that can make a difference in someone's life. Simple things can change the world. Now, I just want to end on a short story about me growing up. As you may have noticed, I was born with one hand. And it's not something that I think about on a day-to-day basis. But growing up, you realize other people definitely do take it into account. How people perceive you is sometimes how obstacles are created. We're not born into the world with them. People create them. However, for that same reason, they can be overcome. Now, basketball is something I'm really passionate about as well. I grew up playing with my brother and my friends, and it was also a platform that allowed me to learn about myself and how people perceived me. I played for 4 years in high school, but I was initially cut from the team, despite being better than other players, because of the way I was born. Now, after some commotion in the community, I was let on the team, and I decided I'd push myself through varsity. Interestingly, it wasn't until varsity year that I realized how much of an impact I had on others by what seemed to me like a small action. As I was stepping off the court after a game one summer, a coach from a rival team approached me, and he tells me, we used you as our inspiration today. Thank you. I never thought that I would be someone else's inspiration. But for that reason, I would now push myself even more. It was a small act of me finding my meaning of good, which triggered into a word of kindness, which caused my perseverance to never stop. And now I'm here talking to you today. This creates hope and possibility. In the same way, youth in these at-risk communities are perceived a certain way, and therefore obstacles are consciously or unconsciously created for them, which prevents an opportunity for a better environment for all of us. Whether it's a kind gesture, a photo with a story, or simply being present with someone, we all have the opportunity to change this world for the better. Now, no matter how differently or the same we're born onto this earth, I encourage all of you to do your little bit of good and plant a seed for hope for each other every single day. know what it may bloom into. Thank you.